He said I was his calm in the chaos, the light he never thought he'd find again. But when I finally let him all the way in, he tore me apart because breaking me made him feel powerful. Funny thing is, I believed him. Not right away, no. At first, I fought it. I had walls built so high even I couldn't remember what the sun looked like from the other side. Years of betrayal, abandonment, and empty promises had carved silence into my soul. I wasn't cold, I was just tired. Tired of being lied to. Tired of being told I was too much or too guarded. Tired of giving love like oxygen and getting crumbs in return. And then he showed up. His name was Aiden. The kind of name you hear once and never forget. The kind of presence that felt like gravity, subtle, silent, and completely inescapable. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He just stayed. Like a lighthouse in the middle of a storm I didn't even realize I was drowning in. We met at a bookstore. I was standing in the philosophy aisle pretending to care about Camus, when in reality I was just trying to avoid seeing my ex with the girl he told me not to worry about. Aiden was 2 feet away, flipping through a worn-out copy of Letters to a Young Poet. He noticed I kept looking over. I noticed he didn't mind. He didn't say anything cheesy. No pickup line, no awkward small talk. Just a quiet glance and one sentence. That one's not bad, but the pain in Rilke's letters feels too familiar sometimes, doesn't it? That's all it took. A crack in my armor. Over the next few weeks, we crossed paths again. At the same bookstore. At the same corner cafe I'd always gone to alone. At the same dog park, even though he didn't have a dog. And every time, he said something that slipped past my defenses. He didn't demand attention, he earned it. Slowly, carefully, lovingly. He wasn't like the others. That's what I told myself. Where others saw my silence as distance, he treated it like depth. Where others mocked my anxiety, he held my hand through every panic attack like it was sacred. He never rushed me. He never asked for more than I was ready to give. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to believe I could be safe with him. He told me I made the world feel quieter. That when I laughed, it sounded like the first day of spring. That he didn't know what healing looked like until he saw it in my eyes. He cooked for me, memorized my coffee order, wrote poems on napkins and left them in my books. Texted me goodnight even when we'd just spent 10 hours together. He kissed my forehead like it meant something. And for the first time in my life, I let someone all the way in. I told him about my father, the one who left when I was 9 and only came back to ruin birthdays. I told him about my college roommate who stole my scholarship essay and never admitted it. I told him about the boy I almost married who cheated on me with my best friend and still said I was too dramatic for leaving. Aiden didn't flinch. He just listened. Like my words were holy and my wounds were proof of survival, not shame. I told myself, this time, it's different. And it was. Until it wasn't. Because as much as Aiden looked like salvation, there were signs I didn't want to see. Like how he never let me meet his friends. How he always kept his phone on silent. How he laughed a little too hard at my insecurities and then said, I'm just kidding, babe, relax. How he once disappeared for 3 days and said his phone died, but his Instagram was still updating. But I didn't push. I didn't question. I had finally found peace, or so I thought. And when you're that starved for love, you convince yourself the poison is just a different flavor of medicine. He told me he loved me after 2 months. Said he'd never met anyone like me. Said I was the only person who'd ever truly understood him. He made promises about forever, about growing old together, about someday teaching our future kids how to read poetry. And I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? He made me feel like the heroine of a story that was finally being written right. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken, just waiting for the right hands to hold the pieces. I remember the night I told him I loved him. It was raining, the kind of soft drizzle that makes everything feel cinematic. We were sitting in his apartment, wrapped in one blanket, watching an old French film we didn't understand. I turned to him, heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape, and whispered, I love you, Aiden. He didn't say it back right away, just stared at me, quiet and unreadable. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he smiled and said, "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." I didn't know it then, but that was the moment he won. Because the second I gave him my heart, he knew he had something to break. There's a silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels staged. It started subtly, like a string going slightly out of tune. At first, I thought I was overthinking it. I'd been conditioned to second guess myself, to gaslight my own instincts. But when it comes, betrayal doesn't explode, it erodes. The little changes came first. He stopped texting goodnight. He still messaged. Just not the same way. No more voice notes that made my chest flutter. No more thinking about you in the middle of his workday. His messages turned dry. Robotic. Like they were sent out of habit, not emotion. I brushed it off. Told myself he was just busy. Work was probably intense. Everyone has bad weeks. But then came the absences. At first, it was a night here, a weekend there. Guys' trip. Late meeting. My mom's sick. I need to drive out of town. Except, I never met his friends. I never saw his office. And I never even heard him talk to his mom. Still, I waited. Because that's what you do when you love someone. Even when the love starts to feel like sand slipping through your fingers. You hold on tighter. Not realizing you're squeezing the life out of yourself just to keep their presence from vanishing. The first real punch to the gut came on a Wednesday. He said he was at work late, a product launch crisis, or whatever corporate lie he dressed it in. I was scrolling Instagram, trying not to spiral, when I saw a story. A girl I didn't know had posted a boomerang, clinking wine glasses at a rooftop bar. It was the kind of generic video you could scroll past. Except he was in the background. Laughing. Leaning close to someone who definitely wasn't me. My chest tightened like I'd swallowed fire. I stared at that blurry silhouette for 10 straight minutes, trying to convince myself it wasn't him. That I was seeing things. That it was a coincidence. But I knew that laugh. That jawline. That shirt. I'd bought it for him. I didn't confront him. Not right away. I wanted to give him a chance to tell the truth on his own. Spoiler. He didn't. When he finally called that night, 3 hours late, his voice was too cheerful. Like guilt didn't live there. "Long day," he said. "Sorry, babe. You wouldn't believe the mess at work." I wanted to scream, to throw the evidence in his face. But something in me froze. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was denial. Maybe it was still the part of me that loved him too much to see the monster forming behind his smile. So I lied. Said I hoped he got some rest. Said I missed him. I hung up the phone and cried in the dark. The next few days were worse. He pulled further away. His touch, once soft, grounding, now felt performative. Like he was touching a memory, not a person. His kisses became colder. His arms looser. His voice, impatient. I started to doubt myself again. Maybe I was too needy. Too sensitive. Maybe I was imagining everything. But then came the messages. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone lit up on the table. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd never been the type. But the name caught my eye. M. With a red heart emoji. One message previewed. I can't stop thinking about last night. My body went cold. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I just sat there, staring at that glowing screen like it was a gun pointed at my chest. He told me once that I was the first person he'd ever trusted. That I was the one he saw a future with. That he would never, ever hurt me. And yet, there it was. Proof that I wasn't special. I was just next. He walked out of the shower, towel around his waist, humming a tune like nothing was wrong. He smiled when he saw me. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. Just tired. I didn't ask about the message. Didn't mention the rooftop bar. Didn't scream or throw his phone or accuse. No. I smiled. Because something inside me had broken, but not the way he wanted. It was the kind of break that becomes clarity. That sharp, terrifying moment where grief becomes steel. And that night, I started to plan. Not how to fix things, but how to survive him. Because I knew now. This wasn't a love story. It was a performance. And I'd been cast as the fool. He didn't love me. He loved how I made him feel. He loved the control. The power. The way I looked at him like he was the sun, when really, he was the eclipse. And now, I could finally see the darkness he'd wrapped in charm. He made me believe I was safe. Made me believe I was different. Made me believe he was different. But all along, he was building me up just so he could enjoy tearing me down. And maybe, just maybe, this was never about love. Maybe this was always about domination. People think heartbreak is loud, that it comes with screaming, crying, slamming doors, and broken glass. But mine came with silence. The kind of silence that wraps around your throat and squeezes, slowly, constantly. You wake up with it. Sleep beside it. Eat with it, if you can even eat. It's not an emotion. It's a presence. A second skin. After I saw that message from him, I couldn't even cry. I just sat there in his apartment, surrounded by memories we had carefully built, and I couldn't feel anything except empty. He kissed me goodbye the next morning. Said, "Love you, baby." Like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't shattered everything just hours before. I smiled and said it back. But inside, something cold was blooming. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the lies or the gaslighting or even the way he made me feel invisible in the end. It was the betrayal of belief. I believed him. I let him in. I gave him the parts of me that I didn't even like looking at in the mirror. And he used it all, every fear, every wound, every vulnerable whisper, to sharpen his knives. That night, I stayed at my place alone. I didn't text. Didn't call. I didn't even try to see if he'd check in. He didn't. And that confirmed what I already knew. He had gotten what he wanted. Because people like Aiden don't seek love, they seek worship. And the moment you stop idolizing them, you become useless. I stopped eating regularly. Stopped answering calls from friends. My world shrank to the size of a dark bedroom, a locked phone screen, and playlists I couldn't even finish without choking. But with the pain came clarity. And then came rage. Not the screaming kind. No, that was too easy. Too obvious. This was colder. Heavier. The kind that simmers, like a quiet war within yourself. I remembered every moment he made me feel crazy for trusting my instincts. Every time he'd smirk and say, "Babe, are you seriously going through my phone?" Every time he'd twist my own fears back on me. "You're only suspicious because you're insecure. That's not my fault." Every moment he used my past trauma not to heal me, but to manipulate me. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning, eyes swollen, lips cracked, soul hollow, and I said it out loud for the first time. He chose to hurt me. Not by accident. Not by mistake. He chose it. He studied me. He memorized every soft spot, every insecurity, every past scar, and then he used them like weapons. And suddenly, the tear stopped. The pain didn't go away, but it transformed. Hardened. I started writing again. Journaling, mostly. But it wasn't for healing. It was for remembering. Documenting. Every lie. Every inconsistency. Every moment I buried to protect his image. And somewhere in that notebook, revenge was born. Not impulsively. Not emotionally. Strategically. Because if he wanted to play with power, he had no idea who he was messing with. I started with small moves. I became distant, but not cold. Sweet, but detached. Just enough to keep him thinking I was still under his spell. He noticed, of course. "You okay lately? You've been quiet." "Just tired," I'd say with a soft smile. "Work's been crazy." He bought it. They always do, men like him. They mistake silence for surrender. I told him I needed space. that I was focusing on myself, that I didn't want to smother the relationship. He praised me for being mature. He had no idea I was pulling away to prepare. In that space, I started investigating, not out of obsession, out of purpose. I followed him, found her Instagram. Turns out, she wasn't just some random girl. She was someone he had known for years. An old friend. A history he never told me about. Their photos dated back long before I entered the picture. I found texts, emails, a few contacts he never deleted. One of them was a woman he had told me was just a client. Another was his so-called cousin, who apparently didn't know they were related when I called pretending to be from the bank. Lie after lie, stack after stack. And still, he smiled at me every time we met, kissed my forehead, told me I was his piece. That's when it clicked. He wasn't just a liar. He was a predator. A man who fed off the belief of others. Who wore love like a costume and used it to rob you blind, not of money, but of trust, of hope, of self-worth. So I stopped crying, stopped aching, and started sharpening my edges. I didn't want to move on. I didn't want closure. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, not just pain, but powerlessness. I didn't want to scream at him. I wanted him to scream into silence. I didn't want to leave him. I wanted him to watch me walk away without explanation and never, ever understand why. And more than that, I wanted him to know that the girl he thought he broke, she was still here, smiling, watching, calculating. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't need fire. It just needs time. And I had all the time in the world. They say revenge is best served cold. I say, it's best served quiet. No fire. No drama. Just silence. And consequences. After weeks of watching, pretending, gathering, I was ready. But I didn't confront him. I didn't call him out. Because men like Aiden expect drama. They prepare for it. They feed on it. What they don't expect is patience. The first move was subtle. I offered to help him organize his freelance business. Told him I could streamline his invoicing, clean up his files. I knew he'd say yes. He always loved the idea of me being impressed by his work. Loved letting me behind the curtain. So he gave me access to his work files, emails, invoices, even passwords. He thought I was supporting him. What I was really doing was building the case. Inside those files were names, clients, conversations, emails he thought were buried, including one where he offered a discount in exchange for private dinners with a client he had told me was married and off limits. Screenshots, copies, backups. I wasn't emotional anymore. I was surgical. Second move, his social circle. Now, I never got to meet his friends officially, but I knew their names, knew their faces from his Instagram. So I did what any smart woman would do. I befriended them. Carefully, quietly, organically. At events, through mutuals, through a fake book club I created online for local creatives and writers, something Aiden always claimed to be. And they welcomed me. Because I was still the sweet one. Still the loving girlfriend. Still the woman who tamed Aiden. But as I built trust with them, I started planting seeds. Not lies. Just the truth, quietly. Piece by piece. Like the time I asked one of them, casually, "Do you think him and Aiden ever had a thing?" He says she's just a friend, but you know how protective he gets when I bring her up. You'd be amazed what people admit when they think you're just insecure. The friend paused, then said, "Wait, he's still talking to her?" And just like that, the mask began to slip. Word spread, not from me, but through them. His friends, his network. Rumors started. Whispers. Nothing dramatic. Nothing direct. Just enough to tilt the spotlight. Just enough to create doubt. By the time Aiden started noticing, it was too late. His clients were backing out. One of them forwarded me an accidental email a woman he'd flirted with during a pitch meeting, now raising concerns about his professional conduct. His reputation? Falling apart like a sandcastle under a rising tide. And through all of it, I stayed quiet. I stayed sweet. He called one night, his voice frazzled. "Babe, you won't believe this. Someone's messing with my files. And my friend Joe isn't even answering me anymore. It's like everyone's turned weird." I bit my lip to keep from laughing. "That's so strange," I said. "Do you think someone's trying to sabotage you?" He sighed, frustrated. "I don't know. Maybe it's just in my head." And I said nothing. Because the beautiful part about revenge isn't the moment they fall, it's the moment they doubt themselves while falling. But I wasn't done yet. He had stolen something from me. My trust, my peace, my time. So I took something back. His pride. I waited for the perfect moment, our anniversary. He planned a dinner. Expensive. Flashy. The kind of place where the waiters say your name like it's a spell and the wine is older than our relationship. He was trying. I could tell. Maybe he sensed something slipping. Maybe he thought he could reel me back in with charm and chandeliers. I showed up in red. He always said red made me look like fire. The dinner was perfect. Until dessert. He handed me a velvet box. A necklace, delicate, silver, heart-shaped. "I just wanted to remind you how much you mean to me," he said. I opened it, smiled, then placed it gently on the table. "Thank you," I said softly. "But you're a little late." He blinked. "Late?" I leaned in, voice low, eyes steady. "To remember who I am. To treat me like I mattered. To stop lying." He laughed, nervous, confused. "What are you talking about?" I slid my phone across the table. Unlocked. Messages. Screenshots. Emails. Every lie. Every flirt. Every woman. His face drained of color. "Where did you get all this?" "You gave it to me." I smiled. "You gave me everything, Aiden. I just finally decided to use it." He looked around like the walls were closing in. "Why? Why are you doing this?" I stood up, picked up my clutch. "Because breaking me made you feel powerful." Then I leaned close, whispered so only he could hear. "Now it's your turn." And I walked away. I didn't block his number. Didn't change mine. Didn't delete his photos or erase the past. I let it all sit there, visible, present. So every time he scrolled, every time he tried to move on, he'd remember the girl he thought he could destroy. Is the same girl who outsmarted him. They always think it ends when you walk away. They think the damage has been done, and that eventually, you'll fade. That your silence means surrender, that your absence means escape. But sometimes, walking away is just the beginning. Sometimes, the silence isn't peace. It's the storm waiting to return. For weeks after that anniversary dinner, I heard nothing. No calls. No texts. Not even the passive-aggressive guilt trip messages I expected. I thought maybe he'd finally accepted defeat. But predators don't vanish that easily. They wait. And sure enough, the message came. "Hey, just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I miss you." I stared at the screen and didn't move. He'd finally said it, what I thought I'd waited months to hear. But now, it felt small. Like trying to repair a house that had already burned down. "Still," I replied, "I think we should talk." "Meet?" He said yes, too quickly. I chose the cafe where we first talked. The one where he quoted Rilke and cracked open my shell without me realizing it. But this time, I wore armor under my smile. When he walked in, he looked exhausted. He had bags under his eyes, scruff he hadn't bothered to shave, and a stiffness in his body that said he was unraveling slowly, privately. He hugged me like a man reaching for a lifeline. I let him. We sat. We ordered coffee. He asked how I'd been, how work was, how I looked. Amazing. I gave polite answers. Calm. Unbothered. Then he said the words he had rehearsed. "I made a mistake." I sipped my coffee, then smiled. No, you made a choice. Over and over again. Every message. Every lie. Every time you looked me in the eye and said, I love you, while planning your next betrayal. He blinked. I was going through a lot. I almost laughed. No, Aiden. I was going through a lot. You were just going through women. His jaw clenched. And for a moment, I saw the mask crack again. That flash of anger, of control slipping away. That tiny fracture where the man beneath the charm revealed himself. But I didn't flinch. I didn't bring you here to forgive you, I said. I brought you here to tell you this. I'm done letting people like you write my story. He frowned. What does that mean? I leaned forward, slow and deliberate. It means I took everything you used against me, my softness, my trust, my heart, and I turned it into steel. It means I've rebuilt myself so far beyond your reach that even your memory can't touch me anymore. His face fell. Because in that moment, he realized something terrifying. It wasn't that I hated him. It was that I no longer needed to. I loved you, he said, almost pleading. And maybe that was true. In the only way a broken man can love, by holding and hurting in the same breath. I stood up, placed my cup down gently. You loved having control. You loved watching me unravel and calling it passion. You loved the power of being needed. But real love? No, Aiden. You never had that to give. He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already walking away. And that should have been the end. But the universe? It has a twisted sense of timing. Because 3 months later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of Aiden drunk, shirtless, ranting on a live stream. Thousands of views. Slurred words. Something about betrayal, about women, about being set up. Apparently, in his spiral, he had tried to clear his name. But instead, he buried it. His clients cut ties. One woman came forward about his manipulation, a story hauntingly similar to mine. Then another. And another. He wasn't just exposed. He was undone. His business folded. His social accounts disappeared. Mutual friends stopped responding to him. His carefully curated world collapsed like a house of cards in a thunderstorm. And all I did was sip tea and watch the flood. But I never gloated, never posted, never bragged. Because the most poetic kind of revenge is watching someone destroy themselves with the very tools they once used to destroy you. I moved on. Not to someone new, not yet. To myself. I traveled, reconnected with friends I'd pushed away, published an article about emotional abuse that went viral, anonymous, but real. And one night, I walked past that same bookstore. Same aisle. Same shelf. A copy of Letters to a Young Poet sat quietly, untouched. I picked it up, held it, and smiled. Because the girl who once hid behind pages and waited for someone to save her was now the author of her own story. And this time, no one gets to right me wrong.